Hello, my name is Aaron Edwards, co-founder and market consultant of Santos Springs. We offer grain marketing solutions to producers in multiple countries. Welcome to our W2H grain marketing channel. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I also recommend tapping the bell so you get future notifications. And if you like what you see, hit the like and share this video with other farmers who care deeply about their grain marketing. If you are a corn or soybean farmer, your revenue depends not only on your production, but also the answer to three simple questions: when, how much, and how you sell. One W, when, two H's, how and how much. Our W2H mentorship provides a clear, concise, and custom approach to answering each one of these three questions for your specific farm throughout the year. Before we start this week's content, it's always important to remember that trading in futures products entails significant risk of loss, which must be understood prior to trading and may not be appropriate for all investors. This commentary and the information contained within should be considered market commentary and reflect the opinions of the author. For those of you watching this with a delay, if you are a U.S. corn or soybean farmer and want to stop being held hostage by market uncertainty, let us teach you how to place each one of your bushels in a grain marketing strategy specifically designed to optimize your farm's revenue. Click on the link and we'll work together to see if our W2H mentorship is the right next step for your grain marketing. A lot to go over. What I consider some optimistic news in the corn market, but more importantly, the focus of everything that we do here is helping farmers take action, helping farmers know what to do. So we always want to start with the call to action. And so let's just, let's see what we have to do. And then I'll go through the whole market update. But for this week, I'm going to check that box. No action required. So if you're busy cutting beans, picking corn, if the field work's overwhelming, in my opinion, with everything that we're seeing in the market, if you want to shut off this video and go back to field work, you are doing no disservice to your grain marketing. That being said, I obviously want you to understand what we do, understand the markets. It's my effort to make this a very succinct, valuable analysis time. So, cut out the time. Let's watch the video. Let's get into the nitty gritty of grain markets. But that's always the caveat. And that's what I want in your mind as you market grain. Should I take action this week now? Yes or no? Then second, what should I do? How much do I need to do it? So we're going to get to the strategy. If you follow, you know how I go about it. But we'll get to the filling out the rest of these recommendations. But I just wanted to start with kind of this week, and we're going to start as we do many weeks, just kind of a bird's eye view, just a quick glance of where we are at with the grain marketing. So we're going to start with the U.S. crop, and let's be able to mark this up. So as we look at this, first thing is the condition is good. We've known that forever. That's not really changed, still stable. Second thing is harvest. So we are looking at the corn crop here. It's giving me grief. This is corn, so just for the sakes, we're looking at corn, and then we will mark this up again, go back to where we were. The condition is good, has been good forever. And then if we look down here, let's see if we can get a highlighter here, or maybe even a pin here. Harvest is strong, 70%. If you want to drop in your comments, although if you're watching this with a delay, it's not as useful. But if you're watching this in real time and you want to comment there, what percentage you're at on your farm. But we're knocking on 3/4 done. I don't think we're quite there yet. We'll see what progress will be made this week. But we're going to be done by Thanksgiving. We're going to be almost all the way done by the end of October, I would guess, on harvest in the U.S. Really no story there. Let's go to soybeans. So we are looking at soybeans. Let's get it to where we can mark this one up as well. And get the pencil there. the crop condition of soybean crop condition is very similar to 2020, and we're at like 80% harvested. If you look at that, there's really no, in my opinion, there's really no story in the U.S. harvest. It's not likely we will have a story. We got to turn to other news, and the main news to turn to would be Brazil. So as we look at Brazil planting, it's always important for some of you. This is a review, but I do a lot of work in Brazil, and so it's always important to understand. And the way that I kind of think about these regions, and I kind of lump them together. So we have Rio Grande do Sul. This is Paraná. If you combine those two, you're just shy of 30% of Brazil's production. All right. And then this, a lot of times, Rio Grande do Sul here, this most southern state right here, this is a little bit different because it's so far south. But a lot of times you have a similar weather pattern that kind of cuts like here. So a lot of times we'll have that region in Mato Grosso do Sul having a very similar thing. The powerhouse state, and what we're going to spend some time talking about, is Mato Grosso. That is just this absolute powerhouse state. And then this is also a very important region of the country for production. It kind of cuts into two major states, but it's Goiás and Minas. And then there's this expansion area that I'll do in yellow up here. And for those of you familiar with it, this is the Mato Piba. This expansion area is formidable. So just as we look at it, and I should have color coordinated this. Actually, I will do that. Let's see if we can back this out a little bit. Didn't allow me to do that, but this well, I'll just cancel that and come back to this because I do want to color coordinate this. I think that'll be a good way to visualize it. I'm going to do in green areas that haven't really planted but aren't late. Areas that haven't planted but aren't late. That's this area. And then we'll do in blue areas that are basically on pace or close to being on pace, and we'll look at that later. And then we'll do in red areas that are late soybean planting. So bird's eye view, green hasn't planted, it's not time to be planting. Blue is okay. The real disaster there on planting progress is the state of Mato Grosso, which in all fairness accounts for a quarter of Brazil's soybean production. And as we look at the forecast, this is from the World Ag Weather, you could see the past precipitation has just been very, very dry. We have kind of okay moisture, and I'll get a picture of it in just a little bit. And of southern Brazil, we have okay moisture. Down in this area, this has kind of been okay. That would actually be better. Okay, we'll do in green, right? This Paraná and Mato Grosso do Sul, this moisture has been not normal, but okay. But this is a problem. I mean, this is a problem, right? And that has delayed planting. And we'll see where we're at on planting in just a little bit. We're going to get those numbers. Yeah, I skipped ahead. We'll go back to the other ones. But as we look at that, and let's get a highlighter. I think that's the best way to visualize this part is with a highlighter. So the powerhouse state in last year, Mato Grosso, this is a quarter of Brazil's soybean production is in this state. They were halfway done last year. They're at 20%. So that is a 30 percentage point lag compared to last year. In all fairness, they planted fast last year, but not 30%, right? They're below on every metric. Historic average last year, soybean planting in Mato Grosso is delayed. And look at how much progress they made. Look how much progress they made from last week, right? They put a lot of beans in the ground last week. Why? Many of you know there was a wave of rain that came through, so planters were just running as fast as they could. But there's still an issue. I'll get this a little bit bigger. There's still an issue. Okay, they planted, 14% of their crop in a week, but they're still late. The other two states that I wanted to point out were Mato Grosso do Sul and Paraná. Okay, Paraná, they had 46% planted last year. They're at 41. That's okay. I'll go back and show you a picture of Paraná crops in a little bit. Mato Grosso do Sul is actually a little bit ahead. They're at 30 and 35. Those are those two states that are okay, right? Those are okay. But if we look kind of across the board, let me see if I can get this in green here. These four states, that right there, it's known as Mato Piba. Maranhão, Tocantins, Piauí, and Bahia. That's that northeastern expansion area. And they had planted last year. They're not really late. Tocantins is a little bit, but there's nothing. I mean, there's no good news there either, right? It's early to be planting, but they're still not doing very well. And then if you look down farther south, you could see kind of across the board. Let's maybe get a red highlighter for some of this here. Just these are the ones that are delayed. Just look at last year compared to this year. This one's not too far off, but it's still 10 percentage points behind. So there's definitely a story. And the big takeaway is obviously this. Last year, they were 28.4% planted. This year, they're 17.6% planted. In this state that is okay, in this state that's looking right, I'm going to show you pictures from this state. Everyone always likes to share pictures of good crops and also disaster crops. We don't have disaster crops yet. What we have is delayed planting. But the first one is Paraná. That's farther south. That's what their crops look like. That picture is from last week. Paraná is known for its red dirt. So you can see kind of what that looks like. And we'll go see some pictures of Mato Grosso do Sul in just a little bit. This is the condition. Let's just get you guys situated a little bit on that condition of the crops. So we've got this yellow here. This is vegetative development. This is from the CONAB website. Give credit where credit is due. This is the, see if we can get that. CONAB, that's the Brazilian agency. That's a B right there. CONAB, and then the other one that we got, let's get the highlighter here, is a lot is emerging. So vegetative development emerging, but again, we're just 17, 18% planted, not all in. We're 17.6% planted. These are pictures also from last week from a customer down there from the state of Mato Grosso do Sul. There's a setup, and it's looking good. I mean, what's in, we're getting to see pictures of the crops that are planted and doing well with adequate moisture, and they look good. There's just not enough yet here. The same operation, just crops looking good. Quick shift to corn. For some of you, again, this might be a bit of a review, but it's important to most of Brazil's corn is produced as double crop, and this would be the double crop region. There's also some double crop here and here. What we're seeing right now is the first crop corn. In the first crop corn, there's some overlap here and here. They plant a little bit of first crop corn here, but not very much. First crop corn in Brazil only accounts for 20 to 25% of production, Brazilian production. And Brazil only produces about a third of the corn the U.S. does, give or take yield, and probably closer to 25 to 30% actually. But the only area that really matters for corn right now is southern Brazil, and you can see kind of adequate. These three southern states are the only thing that matters, and they're a little dry, but it's not too concerning. And it's almost all just in the vegetative development or emerging, and they're about a third of the way planted. So there's no story in corn, mainly because this story in corn at this point in Brazil's crop year doesn't really matter for global supply and demand of corn. The story that does matter for global supply and demand for corn in relation is actually delayed soybean planting. And I know we've looked at this chart a lot, but it's kind of the central part of the current situation. This is always what I'm looking for, and this is a proxy, right? This isn't perfect, but for just as you look at Brazil, I always need this number to be 30% by the end of October in order for us to have a decent shot at double crop corn in Brazil. Now, that's not perfect science. It varies month by month. You can have late rains, but that's a good ballpark number that kind of keeps us honest. So will they get to 30% here? Will they get 30% planted by in the next 10 days? Is it possible? Yes, it's absolutely possible. Is it likely? Well, I have my doubts. That's actually probably the friendliest story for corn is the delayed planting in soybeans. We've gone through that. We've kind of got a good idea on the fundamentals, Brazil's corn. And now it's important to just reevaluate kind of just the philosophy behind what we do, right? So at the base level of the pyramid is the market plan portfolio. That's what, if you're watching this in real time, we have worked together developing your specific portfolio for your specific farm. And that's kind of this template that is just the foundation of establishing how we're going to build a portfolio of bushels for your market that will solve, our goal is to beat your costs, your cash needs, and the market. And we're going to place your bushels in a portfolio. That's the groundwork. Based on that, we still have to execute within that portfolio. So the next level is what these updates, these weekly updates provide. And the philosophy, and this is tried and true, it's things that matter that help me know how to gauge when to sell, when not to sell, and help us take action eventually. We look at the fundamental seasonals, funds, and technicals. That's a lot of the driving force. So the whole first part that we talked about, it's basically fundamental. That's important so we can get situated as where are we in the world, in the marketing calendar, what's going on. That's kind of big picture. That doesn't really drive decisions on sales. That's just, can we just get situated? Can we just get context? Seasonals, funds, and technicals is what we're going to look into now. And then we're going to, out of that, we're going to come up with an action plan. Even if the action is no recommendation or no sale, that is still a decision. You decided not to act. So let's shift gears here. Now we're looking basically the three things we want to cover are seasonals, funds, and technicals. We'll start with the cash position, with the managed money position for the soybean market. Managed money. So this is just the year of 2024. I'm going to put this in red because it has been a rough year. We got to our ultimate low point here. And let's get one. Actually, that didn't show up too well. Let's do a pin in yellow. We got to our ultimate low point here mid-July. Since then, we've gradually been reducing our position size. On the report 2 weeks ago, we got, I guess it probably gets the silver medal or maybe bronze medal of the smallest sold position by managed money or speculative money in the Board of Trade. I'm thinking it gets a bronze because this was similar, and then early in January it's not showing up there. Maybe we can move this over. Early in January we had one, but if it's not on the podium, it's close to it. Can we get this sideways? There we go. So these would be the 4 times that we kind of had smaller positions. We got close to it. The bad news is we kind of took it in the chin with beans plummeting. We got this fund position down. So that's a little bit disheartening. The good news, in my opinion, is how much conviction is there to the downside? So the bad news is if they choose to sell this off again from this price level, that could be catastrophic. That could be absolutely catastrophic for price. I have my doubts because it's October and because they tried to sell it off and it didn't really turn south. With everything that we know, with planting delayed, do they really want to, push that price lower? Is that the expectation? moving forward that this thing is going to plummet. So the central question of this video is it a double bottom in beans? If the speculators were to, let me see if I can make this a little less messy. If the speculators were to just absolutely punish this market and add speculative pressure, then yes, this is not a double bottom. The bottom can absolutely fall out of the bean market, and that would be a major problem. That's going to be not good, bad, in many levels. Seasonally, that's not what I would expect. We'll go through the rest of the logic or the thought process in just a little bit. In order, just for the sake of context, I want to show you here, just kind of do a rundown of markets so we can just kind of get situated. This is TradingView. I like their charting software. So we're looking at crude oil. Crude oil took it on the chin. If we can zoom in here, you can see, crude oil really took a hit. And then the last couple sessions, it's recovered. Gold is just, pushing the highs. When will it run out of steam? How high can it go? It's really off to the races. Not even getting let me see if we can recenter that and get a little better view of it. I mean, gold is just up and away, right? The dollar, this is maybe the biggest story for the soybean complex. The dollar has tremendous strength, just a lot of strength. That, for whatever reason, I think a lot of it might be tied to the elections coming up. There's just this expectation in a strong dollar. Last time Trump was in office, he valued a strong dollar. And I think the market is saying, hey, if Trump wins, strong dollar is something that we can look for. For context, it's not like it's pushing records or anything. It's just recovered quite a bit. So I think that's a major thing. The reason it matters for the soybean market, in addition to just how the dollar impacts exports, but if you look in Brazil has had 1, 2, 3. This is the fourth opportunity this year of pretty strong exchange rate that gives them a good price in Brazilian currency. And last time when we had this run up in August, this exchange rate run up in August that you can see it really peaked out, that coincided, that was about 10 days off, 10 days before the low of soybeans in Chicago. And I think some of the pressure that we've seen selling, we'll just look at it here. Some of the selling pressure that we've seen recently, this sell-off here in May, I believe is due. So this sell-off in August coincided with an exchange rate move in Brazil. This sell-off more recently also coincided with an exchange rate recovery. I think that's part of the issue, or part of the problem. I think I have that. And I think I have, yeah, we can mark this one up. I did a print screen of it. It's from probably an hour ago, but it's close enough for what we're doing. So when we had this sell-off here coincided with an exchange rate move, or actually it'd be kind of, right there. And then this sell-off here also coincided with an exchange rate move. So is this a double bottom, right? If we're going to go through the logic, yes, this is a double bottom, then we'd say, okay, maybe this was be a bottom, and maybe we're forming a bottom in here, and then it'll recover. Wonderful. That would be amazing. That's actually kind of what I expect. But the question is, from this point, is it going to go up like that black line, or is this thing just going to maybe chop sideways a little bit and then just absolutely take a nosedive? I don't have a crystal ball. Nobody does. But I do think it's important to remember that the exchange rate move, if the exchange rate were to continue in the wrong direction, that might encourage farmer selling. But everybody kind of knows the psychology of selling, right? It starts into a rally. You're like, I've got to take advantage of this opportunity. When that goes, that second move in the rally does not always convert to the psychology of farmers selling. It's very hard to sell. Prices go up and then you sell more. That's the right thing to do. It's just very hard psychologically to do it. So, and also if we have that move up in exchange rate, what will the Brazilian crop be looking like? What will delayed planting? So there's a lot of, I think this sell-off was attributed to exchange rate. I'm not sure that we can project that logic into the future. If it sells off more, if the Brazilian currency devalues more, they will sell more soybeans. I'm not convinced of that. And if we look at the January contract, we could do the November. There's just not much time left on the November. Again, maybe it's too much of an optimist, but the question in my mind is, and this is probably the best way to think about it, right? You are right here from this situation. Let's think about what we know. Brazil, delay in planting. What else do we know? It's October. When was the last time you didn't sell in October and regretted it because the market never came back? I'm trying to think if there's a time. The only time that really comes to mind would be like 2012. There might be another outlier year. But even when you have an October rally, it's very rarely the end of the game, right? If it starts recovering, maybe it takes a little bit of a dip and it recovers again. So seasonally, it's not the right time. So Brazil's delayed. Seasonally, it's not the right time. The Brazilian exchange, the BRL, maybe this explains a sell-off, but will it continue selling off? So there's a series of factors, and also the Brazil has delays. Brazil, no crop yet. That should be a C, no crop yet. So there's a lot of issues that make me think, I'm not sure. How sure of a downfall do you have to be to look at the current scenario and say, yeah, it's going to keep going down? There's not going to be any weather issue in Brazil. They are for sure going to get caught up on planting. The delays to planting won't impact the double crop corn in Brazil. Like, how convinced you have to be in that series of narratives that the only possible scenario is that Brazil has a record soybean crop. They have enough of a corn crop to not encourage more people to plant soybeans next year. Nothing is going to go wrong. There's not going to be any uncertainty in the soybean market between now and next year that's going to boost bean prices. So I think this is more likely a double bottom or similar to a double bottom than that we get an absolute sell-off. Again, we're trusting, we'll get to that later, but we're trusting the data, we're trusting what works. Also, if there's the old adage, cash spreads futures. So on this last downturn that we saw on the soybean market, so we saw the move down. This is the Purdue. I'm a Purdue graduate. I'm always biased Purdue, and I really do like their basis tool a lot. This is free online. You can get it. We've seen on the last move down, we've actually seen basis recovering, which seasonally, if you look at the average, it does actually recover, right? At least stabilize. And this is against the January contract. So we saw a move down in futures, and then we saw it's modest, right? I'm not saying that this thing, you got a dime uptick in basis, so you need to be happy with the 40, 50 cent sell-off in beans. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying as prices move down, they're like, hey, I still need beans, and they started bidding at basis. So it would stand to reason that if prices continue following Chicago, we would continue seeing an uptick in basis. It's the old adage of cash spreads futures. And I will actually move over back here just to look at the spreads. We'll come back and talk about corn in a minute. But here's the soybean spread. And so basis, we saw a slight uptick, and the soybean spread is actually weaker than the corn spread, but the soybean spread came down to a low in October, but it didn't even get close to the lows from mid-August, right? So the spread has been stronger. This is the July spread. The spread has been stronger than currently than it was back in August. Again, my thought is this probably is looking more like a double bottom. We'll shift gears to corn. And if you look at corn, you could see we didn't even come, relatively speaking, this is May corn, we didn't even come as low. If we go to Dees, you can see Dees didn't even take the dip. And while we have it, let's look at the spread, right? Let's look at This is the Dees July spread. That spread is just through the roof, right? It's just really climbing up, which means I want corn short term. That's what, when this spread is strengthening, that's what it's saying. I want corn short term. It's a bullish sign. So let's go back and look at some of the numbers on corn. Where were we? The images. Oh, here we go. All right. So the managed money on corn. The managed money on corn, let's get it. Let's be able to mark this up. Again, very similar story. This is the bad news for the managed money, is that they came back to selling this week. Again, if they choose to sell, this is, I think, every farmer's worst nightmare. If they go back to selling this market, we are in trouble. We're looking at speculative money pushing prices lower. This is what should keep farmers up at night if you're prone to anxiety or just this, in my opinion, is the worst case scenario. However, it's also not really what I expect. Right? If we look at, and we just saw this, right? This is December, but we can mark it up here. So this is December. Let's make this a little friendlier, make it green. Here's the lows from August. Here's the lows. So it's starting, it looks like it's trying to recover, right? Resistance, we got to get through the 20-day mover. We got to get to this previous high. Then we got to get through the 200-day, which is moving down, right? We don't know how fast it'll move down. So I'm not saying that we have like this, the wind at our back and this is a forever bullish market. But whenever we have plenty of grain, typically what we have is range bound trade. And it sure looks to me like this is a market that is kind of comfortable, that we're probably closer to the lower end of this range, at least short term. Very similar situation if we look at the May futures, don't need to go through that. The basis is a little bit disheartening. We took, this is again, and it defaults to Tippecanoe County, home of the Boilermakers. But basis is a little disheartening, right? Basis got weaker, spreads got stronger. What to make of that? I think that there's probably a little, this is the December basis. I think part of the strength in the December futures contract has punished this basis a little bit. But the long and the short of it is, I'm not overly concerned with the downside short term of corn let's go through kind of the summary of the reasons, right? So let's take a look at this. Let's put this all together. Seasonally, we're in harvest. Harvest is a buy for corn. We're in harvest. Seasonally, this is a buy for soybeans. Managed money, technically speaking, so I've established some arbitrary points where overbought, oversold. I won't go into all the details on that, but the managed money technically here would be in a buy, and the soybeans would be neutral based on historic levels. And then the trend is down, and this might seem a little bit counterintuitive. Oh, if it's down, if we're in a downtrend, then we want to sell because it's going to continue going down. Well, my thought process is a little bit different, right? You want to sell in an uptrend. You want to sell when markets are recovering, and that's what we talked about. The psychology is hard. Markets recover, and then they go higher. That's where you should be adding into sales. Over time, that'll give you stronger prices. So this is on the Board of Trade, right? Chicago. So seasonally, it's a buy. Managed money is saying buy corn. Beans, not a clear indication on managed money. Yeah, if it goes back to being selling out, that would be a disaster. That would be bad. But it's rare that you would go an entire year with only sold positions and seasonally you would sell off again. It can happen. I don't have a crystal ball, but it's rare. And what we have to do is to place ourselves on the right side of data-driven analysis and action. So, and then here, let's just talk about basis. Maybe we can keep me from typing that. Soybean basis is solid and historically improves over the next few weeks. Corn basis historically is sideways to up between now and the end of the year. If Chicago is in more of a buy and basis encourages patience, I do not see a need for action on the selling side at this time. So that wraps up kind of our analysis. Now let's go back. We've got a couple of questions that we want to go over. So we'll go over a couple of questions here. And let me get it back to the big screen here. And let's get the questions up there. Oh, there's our first question. Okay. If corn is in an uptrend, should I buy calls? First of all, technically, let's get the corn chart up here. First point, let's just look at December, or even, let's look at December. So technically, when it's below the 20-day mover, this blue line here, I would say, and let's look at the images because I think it'll be easier to mark it up. So December here. Oh, you guys aren't seeing my screen. Let's get it sideways there. If corn is in an uptrend, should I buy calls? Okay, so first of all, this 20-day mover here, that's what I use for uptrend, downtrend. If it's below that, it's in a downtrend. Down. So quick correction, it's not in an uptrend, it's in a downtrend. It would have to be above here, right, for us to be looking at an uptrend. Should I buy calls? Nothing necessarily wrong with buying calls, right? Maybe you'll buy calls now. You say, hey, it's October. We had a correction. I bought some calls. I made some money. That was a good decision. But from my vantage point, the challenge of the farmer, from my vantage point, what I'm always looking to accomplish with the producers is how can I reduce my effort, reduce my distractions, reduce all of the noise. And it's not my goal to maintain you informed. It's my goal to help you know when, how much, and how to sell so that you can optimize your revenue, right? So you can have cash when you need cash, beat your costs so you have profits, and within the portfolio of management, beat the market, right? So we want to beat your cash needs, your costs, and the market. That's our goal. And how can we take out the noise, focus on action, and accomplish that, right? So the steps are build a portfolio, look at the indicators, take action. With that as an objective, very rarely will I recommend calls, right? For me, it's like a lot of times options are used, whether it's calls or puts, they're used as what I call tools of indecision, which is the exact opposite of what my goal is to accomplish, right? So should I buy calls? Will I make money buying calls? I don't know. It depends what call. It depends on a bunch of stuff. Now, in my opinion, if you know that there's a chance that basis recovers, there's a chance that futures recovers, you don't need to be distracted with calls. Just wait until it's the right time to sell and then make your sales. Maybe that's a basis contract down the road. Maybe that's futures. Maybe there's a number of ways that you can take action on that, but I don't see the upside to just saying, hey, I bought some calls and it works. Is it a decision that is replicable? Is it a decision that is central? Is it a decision that can take you year after year to better and better results? So it's just, for me, it's not that it's a problem. It's not that it's wrong. You might even do well on your calls. I just don't want an additional project or an additional distraction to keep you focused on making good decisions. And a lot of good decisions is honestly psychological. And I've seen too many times where people get caught up on, they raise whatever, 100, 200, 300,000 bushel, and then they buy 4 calls and get hung up on those 4 calls, and then they get paralyzed on making grain marketing decisions, right? Because it's different mental accounting. So the focus is to manage your marketing. And at this point in time, and just kind of as a philosophy, I'm not, it might work, it might not. It's not central to any type of cohesive strategy that I would defend at this point in time. Next question. Will planting in Brazil continue pressuring markets? So the thought is, if they do keep planting, and it is just this monster crop that's coming out of Brazil is just going to be a damper on the markets. That's my understanding. And I actually think the biggest damper is what we talked about is likely the exchange rate that we saw. But we're also at a point, you have to remember, a quarter of Brazil's production is Mato Grosso, and they're already 30 percentage points behind. So will they get caught up? Maybe. But we're probably already talking about a smaller corn crop down the road. And then if we have less corn out of Brazil, will that affect acreage in the US? And has it already been delayed long enough to where this bullish uncertainty will kind of linger with the market? In my opinion, is the delays that we've already seen will likely be just kind of a cloud over the production possibilities of Brazil for several more weeks, right? Okay, it was off to a late start. Did they get it in? Then, okay, they finally got their crop in, but with a delay. But is it looking good? And just the uncertainty of raising a crop. When you have a couple of hiccups in the spring and you don't get the crop in on time, usually that bullish story lingers somewhat. It lasts a little longer, and I don't expect any reason why this would be different. I think we have one more question, and that'll wrap it up for today. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you watching. Should I sell my corn? Get that back up there. Should I sell my corn across the scales or store it on free storage until the end of this year? Whenever you talk about storage decisions, so if you're under the assumption that I'm going to take my corn into town and I either need to sell it today, price it today, or I need to pay 15 cents and wait, I would probably give yourself the extra 3 months, shy of 3 months, right? 2.5 months. Leave your corn in town. Pay that first lump of storage. I'm not a big fan of paying storage, but just pay that first one. Between basis and board of trade, will it recover enough to cover that 15 cents? And I think there's a decent shot that the answer is yes. So I think that this initial, I don't want to just leave it in storage forever, right? But this initial lump, I don't think that that's a bad decision. The caveat that I would say to that is, I really don't like these bushels that are in custom storage, right? This is the Achilles tendon. So depending longer term, going back to the base of that pyramid, let's see if we can get that. Well, I won't open up, but the base of that pyramid is building a portfolio, right? So the bushels that you don't have in your own storage and you didn't forward price, those are really problematic. Those bushels that go into town in the custom storage, those should be limited to, my goodness, I had an extra 20 bushel an acre that I didn't plan on. Okay, those are extra bushels. That's extra revenue. But in a normal plan, if possible, those bushels should really be minimized. Like the amount of bushels that you have in custom storage, that should really only be run over bushels. And even if you can plan ahead to not even have that, that would be ideal. So I don't like bushels in custom storage. Moving forward, we need to have a plan for you to not have the least amount of bushels in custom storage possible. That's the long-term solution and the best answer. Short-term, you can't go back to May and sell, the mid-May prices on a forward contract. You can make a mental note that that's what you need to do next spring, but you can't go back in time and say, hey, I should have priced these back then. We don't live in a world where you can just hit reverse and go back. So given the options now, I think you say, hey, I really don't like using custom storage. This is something I need to do a better job of avoiding if possible. If they're run over bushels because you had an amazing yield, I don't think anybody's going to apologize for having extra grain to sell, right? Okay, you have to put them in custom storage. You got nothing to do because you got more bushels. Great. That's not a bad problem. But if it's bushels that are in custom storage that could have been avoided with a little more planning, a little more structured portfolio, that is a big mistake. And that needs to be avoided. Now, given this current situation, I'm in this situation, I have these bushels. Yeah, I'd probably give yourself a lot of contracts go into the year, into January, depending on when you harvest. I'd probably give yourself that first window of custom storage, pay whatever fees it is, tuck it away for that amount of time. Don't necessarily need to keep rolling it above and beyond that. So thank you all for watching this week, and appreciate the vote of confidence. And we got more coming next week. So a lot of news. Hopefully we'll be able to, the title of next week's video will be double bottom confirmed or something fun like that. So hopefully we'll be testing some of those resistance points. Have a great week.